The more things change, the more they stay the same. This age-old adage rings painfully true for many Black Americans, particularly when considering their relationship with U.S. institutions. From the criminal justice system to economic structures and policing practices, a pervasive sense of mistrust lingers, fueled by generations of systemic racism and discrimination. This deep-seated skepticism is not merely anecdotal, it's a quantifiable sentiment reflected in recent polls that lay bare the stark reality of how many Black Americans perceive these institutions. This essay delves into the heart of this issue, examining the findings of these polls and exploring the lived experiences that underpin them. We will hear the voices of individuals ensnared in a system seemingly designed to disadvantage them, and we will trace the historical threads that continue to weave a tapestry of inequality. By understanding the roots and ramifications of this distrust, we can begin to envision a path toward a more just and equitable future. Recent polls paint a disconcerting picture of the deep-seated mistrust Black Americans harbor toward key U.S. institutions. A 2023 Pew Research Center survey found that 84% of Black adults believe Black people are treated less fairly than white people in dealings with police, a sentiment echoed in their perceptions of the court system, 74%, and the workplace, 63%. These figures are not mere statistical anomalies, they represent the lived experiences of millions of Black Americans who navigate a world where their race often feels like a liability. These polls also reveal a stark racial divide in how these institutions are perceived. While a majority of white adults acknowledge racial bias exists, far fewer perceive it to be as pervasive or impactful as their Black counterparts do. This disparity highlights a fundamental disconnect in understanding the realities of race in America. Acknowledging this gap is not about assigning blame, but rather about fostering empathy and creating space for productive dialogue about how to dismantle these systemic barriers. The statistical data presented in these polls, while impactful, cannot fully encapsulate the human cost of institutional bias. To truly grasp the weight of this issue, we must listen to the voices of those directly impacted by it. Take, for example, the story of Michael, a young Black man stopped by police while driving in a predominantly white neighborhood. Despite committing no crime, he was subjected to an invasive search and humiliating interrogation based solely on the color of his skin. Or consider the experience of Sarah, a single mother who, despite having a college degree, struggles to secure employment opportunities that pay a living wage, continually passed over for promotions in favor of less qualified white counterparts. These stories, while individual, reflect a broader pattern of systemic disadvantage that permeates every facet of American society. They underscore the urgent need for comprehensive reforms that address the root causes of these disparities. To comprehend the depth of mistrust Black Americans harbor toward U.S. institutions, one must delve into the annals of history. From the era of slavery, through Jim Crow segregation, and into the present day, Black Americans have faced relentless oppression and discrimination at the hands of these very institutions. The legacy of these injustices continues to cast a long shadow, shaping the perceptions and experiences of Black communities today. The deliberate exclusion of Black Americans from economic opportunities, coupled with discriminatory housing policies and mass incarceration, has created a system where disparities are not merely accidental, but rather the predictable outcome of centuries of deliberate disenfranchisement. Understanding this historical context is not about dwelling in the past, it's about recognizing how past injustices continue to shape the present, informing the deep-seated mistrust that permeates Black communities. The perception of institutional bias has profound and far-reaching consequences for Black communities. It erodes trust in law enforcement, making individuals less likely to report crimes or cooperate with investigations. It creates a sense of hopelessness and resignation, leading some to believe that success is unattainable within a system rigged against them. This, in turn, can manifest in a myriad of social ills, from health disparities to educational achievement gaps. However, it is crucial to acknowledge that within this narrative of adversity, there is also immense resilience. Black communities have consistently found ways to thrive despite these systemic barriers, fostering strong social networks, supporting one another, and advocating for change. Recognizing this strength does not diminish the very real challenges they face, but rather highlights the imperative for institutions to acknowledge and address the root causes of this mistrust. The first step toward dismantling the deeply ingrained mistrust between Black communities and U.S. institutions is acknowledging the problem. This requires more than simply acknowledging that racism exists. It demands a willingness to confront the ways in which systems and structures perpetuate inequity. This includes implementing concrete policy changes aimed at addressing racial bias in policing, reforming the criminal justice system, and creating equitable economic opportunities. Moreover, it necessitates a shift in the narrative surrounding race in America. This requires engaging in uncomfortable but necessary conversations about privilege and prejudice, amplifying the voices of those most impacted by these issues, and working collaboratively to create a future where equal justice under law is not an aspiration but a reality. The road to healing and reconciliation will be long and arduous, but it is a journey we must undertake collectively if we are to create a society that truly lives up to its ideals of liberty and justice for all.